All right, if there was a secret to avoiding the chaos that often happens at scale in low-code tools like Copilot Studio, would you want to know it? Of course you would. So let's talk about something really cool that I discovered in Copilot Studio just today that will help you build agents faster and safer than ever before at scale when you're working in Copilot Studio. Now this one is a bit for the ALM aficionados, but there is definite business value here to be unpacked. So let's get into it. All right, we're going to talk about solutions and publishers and the business value that they provide. Trust me, it's there. This is not just nerdy stuff. We'll do a quick recap of what they are, and then we will talk about traditional agent creation and the advanced agent creation that I just discovered in Copilot Studio. This is going to make your life so much easier when it comes to creating agents at scale and then moving them between your environments in the Power Platform. All right, let's get into it. So what is the business value for solutions and publishers? Well, basically, by using these things properly, they ensure that we can create agents at scale and reduce the risk that is inherent with any code deployment. Basically, these make it faster and easier to realize value when creating agents. If we don't do this, we end up with a big steaming mess in our environments, and we start to lose a lot of the advantages that come from using low-code tools like Copilot Studio and Power Platform, and then ultimately the agents that we want to create with them. All right. So what are solutions and publishers? Well, basically, solutions are containers to let us put our customizations in to move them around between environments, and publishers depict the ownership of the solution. Who owns that solution? Who created the elements that are within it? Now, these are really important because it lets us control the releases, it shows clear accountability and ownership, and ultimately gives us enterprise-level governance of the changes that we're creating and deploying around our environment. Let's scale ALM, particularly as we get into continuous integration, automation, things like that. We've got to get things like solutions and publishers right. Now, when you don't use them, let's say you go and create everything using the default solution, you get everything with the prefix of new, or they've recently changed it to CR and a bit of your organization name, but you get things that you're not sure. Is this an out-of-the-box Microsoft thing? Is this something somebody created? You get a bit of confusion, whereas if I create a solution with my publisher, we know that this was created by Nathan Rose or by our organization. There's a lot of different thoughts on how you do this. Microsoft generally tend towards each developer should have their own solution. In the wild, we tend more towards having a publisher for the organization because it just makes it easier with things like schema names, but I'll leave that one up to you all to decide. But without them, we end up with all kinds of problems. Things can break. We can end up with duplicated tables. I'm sure you've all been under the hood in Dataverse environments where there's a new underscore case as well as incident, and it's like, which one do I use, right? And so by ensuring that we have proper publishers and we're using solutions properly, we avoid a lot of this chaos. All right. And of course, we get all of the governance and audit risk, and we can see who's changed what and all of that good stuff. All right. Let's get into a demo and let's see this in action. So I've got a solution that I've created here called Agent ALM Demo, and I've got an agent that I've already added to this. Now, the typical experience when creating an agent is that I come here and I will say, I want to go and create an agent. So I'm in Copilot Studio and I can describe the agent, chat with Copilot to create it, or generally speaking, those of us who are working through some more advanced scenarios are generally just going to go click create the agent, and we're going to get started. Now, this is a fine approach when we're building POCs and stuff like this, but the problem that we run up against is that this agent is going to be dropped into the default solution by default. So if I come here to settings and I get into my advanced settings and my metadata, we'll wait for this to load. You used to be able to see the agent schema name, and when I was prepping for this, I'm not seeing it here in Copilot Studio, so we might go to the advanced creation just to show you the difference, because this was not showing. But I've got this auto underscore agent, the schema name, right? Now, this means that I have no idea who created this agent. I can see, initially I can see who created it, so I can see this was created by me, but over time, this is going to change, right? Who's updated it, who's changed it, the ownership could change, this could move around, and let's say a year or two from now, nobody's necessarily going to know who created this agent or what went into it. So how do I get around this? Well, if I come from the home screen here and I click on agent, so instead of starting here on the home screen, what I actually want to do is I want to come here to agents. And if I start here, there is create blank agent, which is basically that default agent creation. But if I click the down caret here, it's not super obvious, but I click on this, there is an advanced create. And when I click on this, I get this new modal that pops up. Now you can see here, I've got settings, I can pick a language, and there's an option here for solution. And this is what I wanted to show you initially. This is the schema name for the agent. So I get the CRFFO agent underscore 3. Now, when I create it this way, it's going right into the default solution. So this is, so you might recall things in the default solution used to get prefaced with new, that's since changed to CR, FF, and some numbers. But effectively, everything's going to be created with this prefix, which means if somebody else comes along using a publisher, I could potentially have agents with the same name, which is going to start to create some confusion in the organization. So how do I get around this? Well, if I click on this drop down, I see the solutions that are in my environment. Right? They're all there. And so what I can do is I can drop an agent directly into a solution. So if I choose this agent ALM demo, you'll notice all of a sudden that the schema name has changed. Let's go back real quick. If we go to default solution, so now it's doing new underscore, before it was CR, but you get the idea. And if I come here to agent ALM demo, there we go. So if we do common default data services default, we get CR. If I come to the traditional default solution, I get new, which is what most of us who are fairly experienced in Power Platform are used to seeing. But if I choose my solution, I now get the publisher. Now I can edit the name, and it's not going to let me create it. So at this point, I can't do that. But let's just go, all right, let's clear that out. And so it doesn't let me set the name at this point. But if I come back here and say advanced create, and let's just pick and create agent 3, it's going to create it with the schema name that relates to the publisher. So I've created this agent in the solution, and now if I come back to my solution, so the agent is just setting up, but if I come to my solution, in just a moment, there we go. Agent 3 has been automatically created in this solution. So the agent and all of its components are going to inherit the publisher characteristics. So I get that prefix, which is really important as I start to scale, because I want to know who published that agent. And as we get into things like schema names, this is really important when we're working with things like Dataverse tables and how we avoid, say, duplicated tables. We want to make sure that we're using proper schema names, particularly as we get into more pro-code scenarios and we need to, those schema names become really important for that. It's important to get that stuff right. So just wanted to quickly show you that here in the we go back to agents, there is this advanced create functionality, which lets me drop an agent directly into a solution, inheriting all of those publisher characteristics, which starts to make things much easier as I scale development of agents across the organization. All right, that's it from me. Hope it was helpful. Go do something awesome on the Power Platform today, and I'll talk to you soon.